We've been pretty engaging. You know, we tend to take things on and sink our teeth into it, but.
Yeah. But
That
I
one,
think
the question, that one was law enforcement. The one was asking us to redefine,
It's 4 o'clock?
redefine the ordinance, because the ordinance is
Well,
already
you
in
tell
place.
me to wait when it's, we use
Well,
it.
what's the?
Yeah, but it's convenient to mention it now.
All right.
Okay.
Since it's 4 o'clock, we'll call the Grand Marais Planning Commission meeting to order. It's 4 o'clock somewhere.
Yes.
Let the roll call show that Commissioner Greenwood is not present. Next item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda.
I move to adopt that fair agenda.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Agenda is approved. The minutes of the previous meeting are,
This might be a good time to mention what's not on the agenda.
well, see, I don't know what's not on the agenda, so something is not on the agenda that was
Right.
advertised.
So we
to
did
be on the
advertise for a
agenda.
variance for a substandard lot, and the applicants have removed that application. They're not going forward with it. So unfortunately, they did that after we mailed you all an invitation to come to our meeting. Yeah,
Where is this lot? I mean,
it's on 8th Avenue.
on 8th Avenue, okay. All right,
So that variance is not happening.
so,
Huh, there you go.
all right.
You don't have to stick around anymore if you don't want to.
But for the
We would love to.
But it's
entertainment
fun.
value,
It's definitely
you're
a
certainly
riveting
welcome to
experience.
stay,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, and maybe this is a good time for you to bring something up too, as long as there's people in the audience that are interested generally in planning and
Coming to
something like
meetings.
that.
That's right.
Yeah.
You all would love to be on the board here. I'm leaving, and so anybody who's interested should think about coming on. It's very fun. These guys are a hoot.
So have you officially submitted your resignation, or?
He has.
Yes, I did.
He
Yes.
has. And so when is that effective?
Today. Well, after today.
Or tomorrow?
Or tomorrow.
He sent me a note, said this is his last meeting.
All right.
Did I
well,
scare you off?
No. No, not at all.
Yeah.
You've made it all the more fun.
He's regretting it. So. All right. So just to continue on, we will be looking for a replacement for Michael. So if anybody out there is interested in serving on the planning commission, contact
Yeah, what
Mike.
about that guy?
Or we have two public hearings scheduled. The first is the issue of the zoning ordinance amendment regarding lodging in the first floor, on the first floor in the DW Downtown Waterfront Zone District. Oh, we didn't approve the minutes, so
No.
I think we skipped over that. We almost got to it. Let's back up a little bit.
I'll move
we
for
have-
that.
We have minutes from the August 1st meeting. Motion has been made to approve those minutes as presented,
I'll second.
and there's a second. Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes, those minutes are approved. So the first public hearing we have is regarding the lodging amendment, or the amendment to the zoning ordinance regarding lodging in the first floor in the downtown waterfront zone district. And we have an ordinance, because this is done as an ordinance amendment. And you see the change that we made. We took and removed lodging from the permitted uses on the first floor in the downtown waterfront district. And I also passed out a map too, because I don't think any of us really had the map in front of us while we were having this conversation. I think we all assumed everybody kind of knew where that district was, but just to make sure everybody's clear, it's the brown colored area of the map, which takes in, you know, pretty much the core area of the downtown. Is there any discussion on this amongst the planning commission before we open this up to the public?
I just want to express my reservations about this. After our last meeting, we talked about informing the public more. I really hope all these people are here to talk about it, but I doubt it, because I bet we didn't do a very good job telling the people we were going to do this tonight. So I just want to express my frustration of expecting things to have happened. The radio interview didn't air until today. There was nothing in the paper. And I just feel like it's kind of our responsibility to make sure the public knows what it is we're talking about and not just expect them to watch YouTube videos to know what we're doing. So I just want to start expressing my frustration with that.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so we will open it up for public comment. This is an opportunity for anybody that has any comments, questions, concerns regarding the ordinance amendment proposal to offer their comments. Fritz, and if you would step up to the microphone and identify yourself.
Hi, Fritz Sabanya, resident of Grand Marais, Creechville. I didn't know anything about this, but I came on another issue. But I would tend to agree with Stacy that too much emphasis is put on Twittering and things like that in this day and age. That it's not everybody does that. And there was no buzz around town that I heard of. You know, and to be locked into a new technological thing while a major portion of the population is still functioning on the old ways, let's say, you know, or we're 60 years old, or we're 70 years old, or we're 50 years old, and we don't choose to have multiple forms of communication, which you would think would bring more information out onto the table, but it's obvious. Board member here, Stacy, doesn't think that a good job was done to notify the people. And like, I'm here for another issue, completely another issue, but I never got any notification of this issue in the mail at all. None. No packet, nothing. I saw it for the first time this afternoon. So, and I guess that's what prompted me to raise my hand, because someone's not doing their job. And we're paying the taxes here for that. That's all. Wish
Can I ask a
had the
question?
Package
Thank
of
you.
information that deals with my neighbor's concerns, but I don't. So there's something went through.
I want to clarify, are you referring to the ordinance modification regarding lodgings that you didn't receive notice on?
Referring to the Anton Moody issue.
I think
and I
you're referring
received-
to the ordinance modification regarding,
Yeah, but I think we're
Lodgings.
talking the same issue.
We're talking communications.
Mhm.
And I brought up, the question was by the chairperson about the ordinance modification issue. Okay, but add on, I didn't know anything about it, but the thing of it is, there's an issue on the table after this, that if Anton hadn't have called me, I would know nothing about it. And this is my neighboring property owner.
Sure.
There should be notification of that, as there has been in the past for similar situations.
let's ask Mike, what is standard notification procedure in this case, and was it followed?
Standard notification procedure in which one?
In this is what we're
I guess we're talking
We're-
both, because there's a general criticism against notification in general. One being that, I think initially about the zoning, or the ordinance modification. The second being about being a neighboring person on a different subject. And that technology shouldn't be depended upon for notification. But my understanding is there's old school methods in place. that-
Well, in fact, the old school methods are the methods that we've used.
Yes.
You know, the notification in the newspaper, which regarding a ordinance amendment is required. There's not a notification requirement to property owners for an ordinance amendment, where in some cases there are requirements for notification of nearby or adjacent property owners within a certain distance of a particular request. So with regard to the ordinance amendment, the city placed an ad in the news, or notification, public notice in the newspaper advertising this meeting as a public hearing, which is the reason why we have other people showing up here, because that was also advertised that there was going to be a variance request before us.
And let's just go back in time a little bit. This isn't a new conversation, this is the end of a conversation. We've gone door to door to every property owner downtown twice. We have dropped off leaflets of information. We have met with existing organizations that talk about these sorts of things, like the Chamber of Commerce and such, and let them know that this issue is going on. So I think that we've made extraordinary efforts, really, with this ordinance in getting the word out, which doesn't mean that I don't agree with Stacy. I've continually been frustrated by, well, public hearings in general, because they're just a terrible way to involve people in a conversation, because generally people don't come to them. So,
And I want
We
to
need-
clarify something too, has modern methods. I don't think we use Twitter, do we?
no.
Okay, whatever modern methods we're employing, I think mostly video and YouTube and websites, are they replacing already in place existing old school communication methods?
No.
Or are they in addition to?
No, we don't imagine that there's any one method that does everything. You know, if there's a method out there that catches 10% of the people, that's pretty effective. So we're always going to use multiple means to try and get the word out to folks. We're not yet mailing packets of information to everyone in the city when there's an ordinance proposal on the table.
Has that ever been the case?
No. I mean, that would certainly, we could do that, but most people probably wouldn't look at them anyway.
Just one second. Are you done? Yeah. Okay. Fritz?
I can leave this issue for now and bring up the wrong issue when Anton Moody's.
Yes, when we open up the public hearing for the
Yeah.
next request, you will
Let
certainly have an
you guys
opportunity to
work on that.
speak to that too. Thank you. Thanks, Fritz. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? All right, we will close the public hearing and return the conversation back to the planning commission.
Yeah. I like the way that it's really straightforward and simple on here, the way that it's turned out after all of our conversation. I feel like it's pretty clear what we're saying, and leaving opportunity for people to come in and engage with us if they want to do something on the first floor.
Anybody else?
I also agree. I think, like, it's cleaner language than when we started with. I think we made good progress. I personally, I agree with compromise. I mean, we all have to compromise, so I'm willing to compromise. I am still really concerned about the way this is worded, that we're not defining what's on their first floor, that we have no control. It could be a hotel lobby. It could be empty space. That concerns me because we chose not to define anything. So, yeah, yay, we don't have it on the first floor, but we really didn't maybe improve what's on our first floor.
Well,
I don't know.
You know, and I guess with respect to that, you know, the types of uses that we see on the first floor, you know, in the downtown area are the types of uses that I think we would expect to see in the downtown area. You know, shops and restaurants, places that bring people in. And I think that in our conversation that was one of the things we were trying to, you know, reinforce, is that we want the pedestrian experience, that person that's walking down the sidewalk, to feel like the storefronts are inviting and attractive, and not just, as you say, a blank space or an empty space. It's pretty unlikely it would be an empty space, because not that we haven't had properties where little has been done, you know. I mean, we all know the old theater that
Right.
sat there for years. I don't know that this would change any of that, but, you know, as I've said, you know, the downtown real estate is some of the most valuable land in town. It's pretty unlikely that somebody is going to build something or create something and not utilize it for some, purpose that,
Well, except that we've just made the second floor more valuable. So it might pay to do something with your second floor and leave your first floor to not be utilized in the best manner.
well, I think market conditions will prevail and that people will make the most of those, the square footage that they're gonna develop or have access to. I mean, I think it's a simple solution to the concerns that we heard raised, and that there was potential for eroding that pedestrian feel in the downtown area by allowing lodging that might not be the most appropriate use on the first floor. And I think we had, a pretty thorough conversation of this over multiple meetings. Not that this is necessarily perfect, but, we heard a lot of other issues too kind of spin off from this, and I hope that somewhere down the line that we continue those conversations with regard to those other issues, because they're not gonna go away either.
And I felt like when we tried to start, prescribing what people should do, that felt like, oh, that's a rat hole. I mean, we weren't getting anywhere there.
To go back to, when this conversation started, we were presented for, history here, but from some concerns from the area business community that there was the danger of impacting a critical mass of retail by having too many blacked out windows on the streets that would be first floors of what could be active, publicly engaging retail space, becoming vacation rentals and things like that. And so, in order to address that concern, right now, it's a permitted use. And what we're talking about doing here is making it a conditional use, which doesn't stop it from happening. It just means they have to pass through this board and the council to get a permit request. It's a pretty soft correction. There's been other discussion on this board saying let's extend that conditions permit to everything. Right now, it's if you in this map, it is a conditional use requirement in the blue area. You can't have vacation rentals in the white areas. We did that a while back. However, in the yellow areas, it's still a permitted use, and in the red areas, or the orange areas, it's a permitted use. So when we sent this ordinance forward at our last meeting, we said we will go with this for now, but we will discuss this more. And so I would like to make sure, and we reinforce that, and maybe make sure it's on our next agenda. I think this is an important first step. I think it helps maybe give us a little bit of control over a situation that I think the public believes we have control over, but we don't. And so this gives us some control. It's a completely unpermitted, it's a completely permitted process, meaning we don't get involved unless we make it a conditional use permit process. I'm not normally in favor of that. I like to have a list of what can and can't be done. That way people clearly know. But I think this is a step in the right direction, but I do believe we can and should go further down the road as we discuss this. I think the public does have a lot of concerns about that, and I think they're growing. I would like to make the motion that we approve this today, along with the condition that we continue our discussion as we said we would, and look at any additional steps, should they be necessary, to meet those goals.
Is that a motion?
I guess it is, yeah.
Motion to approve the language as presented.
I would second that.
The motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other comments?
Just, I would like to, I can't remember exactly how this works. Do I place a condition on this that we or to say, let's get this on the next agenda?
I think the direction, is probably adequate. I mean, it's not part of the ordinance amendment to do that, but, I think we all understand, because we've had that conversation, that those issues are still out there and they're not gonna go away, so bringing that back, if we direct Mike to do that, Yeah, that can be brought back to our next.
Yeah, other topics that have come up before us is making a conditional use permit process wherever it's allowed, and also addressing parking. Some of these things are pretty loose right now, so I would love to have those conversations.
Yeah, and to just point out that this action that we take is a recommendation to the city council. So even with regard to your concern, Stacy, if there are others that, feel that they still haven't had an opportunity to look at what we're doing or suggest, want to see something different happen, there still is an opportunity to come before the city council. The council has to have 2 readings of this before the ordinance amendment becomes official. So there is additional process if people are concerned.
Sometimes that's what it takes to get people out too, when things are really going. And I just wanted to clarify, I'm making this motion not because I believe this is perfect, but I believe it's a step in the right direction. And I think if we have a broader public engagement, we'll get more feedback in the same direction. I think pushing for additional controls.
Yeah, because I think like in what I was suggesting before, it's just that, yeah, we need to get what they want, because we were trying to make a decision
Yeah.
without any kind of feedback.
We've received quite a bit of feedback.
Well,
Yes.
Not people coming to your meetings,
right,
but in different ways.
yeah.
Well, we went out,
And-
and Patrick went out and specifically contacted downtown business people. We had a means for others to submit comments. And I can't remember, 70-some responses that we received that, were, kind of all, most of them supporting this
Yeah.
language. And some, taking a different, approach or step to how to deal with the issue. But, I think this reflects what I would say is, the substance of the opinions that we've heard.
Yeah.
Any other comments? We'll call the vote. All those in favor, vote aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. This will be sent on to the city council. Okay, the second item is a preliminary plat application for a parcel, 2.74 acre parcel, which is zoned R1, proposed to be split into 8 lots intended for single-family homes. Anton, do you want to come up and just explain the plat so we are clear what we're looking at? And identify yourself for the camera so that we can make sure this is part of the record.
Yeah, I'm Anton Moody. I guess before I'd start, I'd say that I'd called and talked to Fritz today. It sounds like the Smiths maybe didn't get anything in the mail, and I honestly haven't been to the mail. So I don't know, because I'm an adjacent on the other side, so I don't know if, anyway, just throwing that out there, because we have to go through our part of it too, but I want to make sure that everybody is cool with this and talking about it and understands it. And if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I just want to make sure that the adjacent property owners have a chance. So anyways, I put that out there first. It's been a couple years probably in the works here of, I had developed some property on the New Gunflint Trail just to the east of the plat. And, probably a year and a half ago or so, started looking at this property, and over the course of almost another year, 6 months, was able to, after doing some wetland delineation work and in talking to the city, but mostly with the utilities guys about where the utilities are at and how we could make the utilities work, tried to come up with a few different concepts to build out this plat. It has been platted since 1912 in the classic grid pattern. What threw a loop to that is the 2nd Avenue West drainage ditch. Typically, you'd build out each avenue and have access, water, sewer, electric, and a street on each side. This became early on a challenge simply because of, there's a giant ditch right there, so you can't run a street up. So if you were to just run Third Avenue west up, how would you access those properties along the east side? So went through a bunch of different design revisions and ideas, and we've come up with what we have now. And so, in a lot of ways, I think this is one of our previous plans had been to run up the proposed, you can see that right up the center where the alley would be. We had thought about turning that into, you know, a 2nd and a half Avenue West or something, and running water and sewer back over where it's stubbed on 3rd Avenue West down, and tying in everything so you could just split off and service both sides of the city block that way. However, during the wetland delineation process, some biologists found a threatened species of flower in the county right-of-way, which would have basically been impacted by us doing that, and so that was shut down. And they did a survey, the DNR did a full survey of the property, making sure it wasn't some, you know, it came in from the property into the right-of-way. It must have just been in their seed mix, and there it is. So one of 2 places in the state of Minnesota where it exists. So,
What is it, by the way?
cuckoo flower, Cardamom pratensis or something is what the Latin name is. So, yep. So, so that was a curveball. And really, you know, thinking of like the straight shots, more classic grid pattern design, and even that initial trying to widen, make the right-of-way wider in the alley easement and making the road go up through there, I really am happy with the kind of sweep of what this road does and how these lots would be broken out into the area where this is. It isn't like the area south of County Road 7 in town where it's very grid pattern, it is grid pattern development. This to me fits in better with what is the surrounding homes are. Everything that we've looked at, we haven't, because we're only this far along, we have some designs, we're always doing design work and saying this one might be a good one for here or there, but until we get too far, we're not putting too much into it. But they're small, 800 to maybe at the absolute most 1,200 square foot footprints on homes. So small homes, trying to keep the price point a little more reasonable for after going through all of this. And so let's see. That's, I mean, I'm assuming there'll be probably plenty of questions, and I'm happy to answer anything you guys have. I don't know if that was a good overview or not.
Yeah, the other thing that, you know, I have to ask Charlie about too, before the meeting was, I was questioning, I couldn't read the details on this.
Here's- I've got a couple
The wetland
larger-
issues in there.
Yeah,
How-
so-
how those are being addressed.
So one of the when this ditch was created, which, you know, made it hard for us to run a street, one of the problems with that when that got put in is the grade on the edge of that ditch is higher than the grade on my lot, on my city block. So if you look up on 9th Street or Dakota Street, where there's an alley right up above it, right above where it says Dakota, there's a culvert that comes through, and it comes out, and then you can come right below that and you start to see that little arm of wetland. Well, the natural topography, you can see in the topo lines, the natural draw on that runs right into that ditch. But when they set that grade for that ditch, it basically made a dam and kept all the water out of the ditch instead of putting it into the ditch. So now all that water, instead of continuing to flow into that ditch, it now just comes and forms and basically fills in that bottom quarter of the property. So there's a long finger of wetland that comes down basically right adjacent to the road cut that we see. And you can see where it runs over and it meets the ditch, but then it follows the property line down to the south. And then there's that area with the diagonal lines, that's mosaic wetland. So that's a 50-50, right? Charlie could probably speak better to that.
So 42%.
Okay. And then it sweeps all the way back out over to that outlot A. And so a lot of our design process is based around minimal impacts for the wetlands. When I bought this, I bought it from a husband and wife. One of them owned a quarter of it and the other one owned 3/4 of it. So there's a general rule in determining a de minimis that you can't subdivide to increase your de minimis, and the de minimis would be that area that can be affected without having to buy credits, and that's 10,000 square feet. So when they were joined separately or owned separately, there was 20,000 square feet of de minimis. So 20,000 square feet of impacts that could be had before there would be any payments by me. But now when I bought it, now it's all one contiguous parcel, so I get back down to 10,000. I was thinking this morning when I was walking that this has been platted since 1912. I have the blueprint map up on my office wall from the old survey building downtown by the job when that got torn down. And you could make an argument, but I guess my point is even at 10,000 square feet, we won't come anywhere near that to reaching that as far as disturbance goes. So it's part of the issue where you see in block 2, lots 3 and 4, all of lot A, that outlot A in the corner, bottom left corner, is just being left. And I don't know if I don't know what we do with that, if we deed it to the city or it just is what it is. Block, or lots 4 and 3 in block 2 there, they are, they're majority wetland, which is why those lot sizes are up as large as they are. 18,000, almost 14,000 square feet. Again, our design plan on those is, that's where we'll fit smaller homes so that our impacts are minimal. And again, we have 10,000 square feet that we can disturb without having to get into and we still have to do, there's rules. It's not like we could just go in there and do whatever we want. There's still rules that we have to follow. But if we look at those areas and potentially the crossing on Site 2 to get to the upland area from the road, it's really those 3 locations. And again, if you're building a 1,000 square foot house as the largest size, and you do 3 of those with a road bed, you're still, we have plenty of room. And so our intention is not only to design to make sure that we don't impact the wetlands negatively, but also the view sheds and just the overall impact of the neighborhood is, it's a beautiful site. The trees are really nice. It's a really cool piece of property compared to some of the other stuff that we've been building on. The woods are really nice, and so our intention is to it'll probably slow us down a little bit, but try and keep as much of that as we can.
So you had said earlier that, this edge of this drainage ditch imposed a dam that was creating, the reason why that water didn't flow through there is...
Between that and the Gunflint Trail, both of those create that fill from the overburden when they built the Gunflint Trail out. That also creates a higher grade than what the natural topography was there, because obviously the Gunflint's built at a certain elevation. They don't have the road pitching like it used to do down towards the city ditch right above the football fields. So that creation of the hillside running down, them flattening that out, the way that between those 2 things is what created that pocket. And of course, now it's wetland, and so now, even if we wanted to, we couldn't carve out that corner of the drainage ditch there to make it all go again, because then we'd be draining wetlands, and then we'd be in big trouble.
So how would you propose to place structures in those areas on the, within the wetland, and still not I mean, and create a safe, I mean, a sound building site? I mean, are you gonna have to raise that up? How would you go about doing that?
Well, like anything, you have to, I mean, you'd get rid of any natural soils in the area where a building is, drain tile around the building perimeter, washed, clean fill, and then your building. So you're right, 1,000 square foot footprint of a house takes up more than 1,000 square feet once you know, because you can't just have the walls of the house go right down to natural dirt. I mean, so there
Right.
will,
So do you know how much you would have to raise that building elevation or the site to make that work for a building site?
no, I mean, not much. I mean, it really depends on, again, it's all site specific on, I mean, this is all, we have wetland delineation flags out there and data points from that. And we have road center line that we put in when we did some initial clearing, because we had to do geotechnical drilling to find out where bedrock is, so we can get that to the engineers. And besides that, and like standing out there, we don't have these lines. Charlie hasn't put these lines out there for us to go and stand and say, okay, well, here is where we're in this, and it's basically designing around that. But we're talking 3 feet, 4 feet? I mean, we're not talking 4, you know what I mean? It's not.
That's good to know. I mean, that you're talking a 3, 4, 5 foot maximum.
I don't even think that much, because, I mean, our whole intention is designing the buildings to fit into the site so that, you know, if it's, yeah, that's our intention, is to have, you know, and maybe it's, again, it's where the view sheds are, and it doesn't make any sense to build something necessarily down here that's tall enough that you can see from the rest of them that we're trying to do. But, you know, that'll come out more so in how I mean, we're building it on spec. We're not building these just to sell lots to just have somebody put whatever house they want. It's kind of a unique control factor that we have, where we can, being the developer of the property, of the infrastructure side of it and the lots, that we also, I mean, really, you guys could tell us if you wanted to, if you had certain things that you wanted us to do, but, you know, we'll have control over where and what gets placed on those. You know, it's if Lot 2, Lot 4, in theory, could have up to 3,000 square feet of disturbance and still make the other properties all work as an overall, well, we're not gonna, you know, if you were to just sell that lot outright to somebody and they know they've got that much, well, they might come in there and put in whatever they need to do to put in a 3-stall garage and a, you know, 2,000 square foot house. But that's not what our intention is. Our intention is, it's all small, like I say, 800 to, I don't even know if we could do 1,200 because of the lot sizes. We had on one of our initial, we did a whole bunch of drawings. On one of our initial drawings, we actually had, you have that one? We plugged in 40 by 40, which is 1,600 square feet, plus a garage pad, into these, to see how, I mean, if I could pass it around if you guys want to see it. And so those are, I was kind of a little bit like, why are you even drawing those? Because that's too big, that's bigger than anything that we necessarily want to do, but it was more of that, like, here, let's show what our maximum impacts would be if we were to try and build these out. So, I mean, again, they're just blobs on black rectangles on a page, but.
So the other thing you mentioned too was that you'd done some boring testing. Was that for the area where you would be placing the utilities?
Yes.
And do you have adequate depth to?
We'll have to
bedrock?
blast. We really only have 2 things that we have to, you know, you can build the road bed up for your grade, but the 2 things you gotta meet is the grade at the 3rd Avenue down on the Gunflint and the grade up at 9th Street. And of course, the one that is the hardest for us to change is the one up on 9th Street, because that's an existing roadway, and that's where the bedrock is the closest to the surface. So I think at that point, we were at maybe 4 feet, if I remember right, for about a 40-foot stretch. So there we'll have to blast, for water and sewer, just to make sure we get our depths.
Have you, Mike, had any conversations at all with our city engineers about this project and the viability of, you know,
Well-
putting in that utility service?
Actually, yes, although this is preliminary, you know, we don't need to dig into that level of detail in the preliminary plat.
So that's what we're waiting for, is approval of this.
Yeah.
My engineers are ready to go, but I've just said, would you just wait like till Tuesday night before you go? Because obviously, if I don't have to spend that much more on engineering, if you guys say absolutely not on this, then I don't want to have absolutely not plus a giant engineer's bill for something I'm not going to build. So that's what we're waiting on. And we have, like I said, Charlie's got a few more things to do to hand off to them. And then with our drilling information that we have, I think we did 40 test holes right away up the proposed center line.
So if the preliminary plat gets approved and Anton then proceeds to actually create engineered sewer and water and road plans, one option we have is to have our engineer look at those, review that. One of the options he had was to actually just hire our engineer. We just had a contract engineer. If our staff had any concerns about it, we may recommend that, but I really think that any qualified civil engineer would tell you, yes, I can plan something here, and
And the
it's
state
just a
has to-
question of money.
The state has to approve it too, right?
When we submit plans for water and sewer extensions, the state actually has to review those plans and sign off on them as well, so.
And I did reach out, I initially was speaking to LHB about this, and then I've worked with MSA on projects with stormwater stuff up in the business park, and I got quotes from both of them, and
Okay.
I went with MSA.
Well, going through the information with regard to the application, there are a couple issues that, you know, we just should point out. One, that there are two variances from the minimum standards. One is for the Block 1, Lot 2, which is 9,636 square feet, and minimum requirement is 10,000 square feet. The other is Lot 2, Block 2, which requires 120 foot depth, and that, what I can't remember what it said here was the
101 and a half.
Yeah, so it's 80 to 100 feet deep.
yeah. So
I mean,
They don't
if you
meet-
flip the depth width, it meets both of those requirements, but
Yeah.
technically it's supposed to be the other way.
because it's oriented to the street on the
Got it.
depth side, but yes. Also, you're calling for the vacation of the alleyway and portion of Third Avenue West, right?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the alleyway vacation can just happen. This is a replat of an existing platted property. That's not an issue. The Third Avenue West vacation would have to be done as a separate process, and it would have to be done before the final plat could be approved.
And from what I understand on that, it's the property owners that are adjacent to it need to be in agreement to it, or if they're not, then it's a 4/5 of the council, which of course I can't vote on it, which means it would have to be unanimous council vote. Part of why I was a little late getting here is I was talking to Fritz, and so we've, you know, he can say his piece to that, but we were just discussing on how those impacts that I've been talking about and doing, how that would impact or potentially improve any future possibility for him. And so that's one thing we talked about is, it's kind of probably, if you guys have the small, Tim, you guys have the big one there, but
Yep.
there is the proposed sewer shots. And one thing that I talked to Fritz about was just, we could extend up sewer and water. You know, we were gonna already extend it, I think it's 60, almost 90 feet from where it is right now, but that we could extend up a little bit further in case, so that he'd have, you know, just as a, whatever, well, since we're out there. Because then that would make life easier for him if he ever did anything with his properties. He'd have, it would be that much closer and set up to tie into versus going through all the, you know, all the stuff we have to go through to go with the
Okay.
big main lines and stuff.
I don't know if the other commissioners have any other questions before we open it up to public hearing comments. I mean, all we're trying to do is, I think, just get clarification as to what he's proposing, and
Yeah.
if there's questions about it, and I had a few questions just before we
Yeah,
started the
I'm
public
curious to hear
hearing.
what other people want to.
You had mentioned it takes a certain amount of people on the opposite side of the street to approve. What was that, percentage or amount?
Oh, that would be for the vacation.
Right, for that part.
Because you could do it the way I don't want to do it, which would be just like, I want this vacated and appeal to you guys in the city council and then get not vote and try and do it that way, but then I just made my neighbor mad and that's
So it's
no.
either or, you either get a.
I think, I've
unanimous?
never done this before, so I
Okay.
don't know, Mike might be able to lean into that.
Yeah,
I'm
if
sure
the
there's more
vacation
steps
is
than that.
done by petition of a majority of the adjacent owners,
Majority.
and since there's only 2 adjacent owners here, that means both of them.
It's a 50-50 then, unless,
It has to be both of them,
Right.
then it's a simple majority by the council can make it happen. If there's not a petition, then the council can still do it, but they require 4/5.
Which
And
in this
since
case would be
Anton's not
unanimous.
gonna participate, it's actually a
Unanimous.
4/4.
And I'm happy to answer any, we've had I've talked to, well, I haven't really, I've been meaning to talk to the Smiths for some time, but then it kind of just, I don't know how long we've been talking about this. It seems like for a while and everything just kind of stopped. Charlie's been really busy and then it was finally like, it's August, like if we're gonna try and do anything, we really need to go. And so it really is this stuff that you have in front of, it's whatever it was, the 10th or the 11th, I think, is when it finally got, 10th is when all this stuff finally got into our hands. So I want to, Fritz was surprised by it, and that's not my intention either. I want to just be, we hadn't had any new information basically except for our pretty little sketches, which only does so much. It's not the same as putting it into the actual, into the software and seeing where how stuff spits out. So, I'm happy to answer questions if people have questions, and if they have concerns, I'm happy to either help solve them or make it so it's not a concern. So.
Okay, thank you. So if we have any other questions, we'll ask that.
I just want to,
Okay,
Charlie Trovo with North Shore Land Survey, and Anton referenced me a few times, and I just want to identify myself. I hadn't done that yet. But I guess the only thing that I kind of want to bring up is one question you had was, was the one lot's a little less than the 10,000 square feet and the dimension requirements on the other one. It's really comes down to, it's kind of a product of that, having a relatively small piece of property that doesn't have that street access on the side where the ditch is now, and trying to lay out a curvilinear road that goes through the property that's, a functioning road, sort of, gives you a few hurdles on trying to make everything meet just perfectly. So, we tried to lay it in there the best we could. Oh, yeah, and I'll bring that up too. The other thing is, the width of the right-of-way we're proposing is 50 feet wide, where, it's stated in the write-up that 66 is the requirement. Kind of, I guess, our vision on this is that this is a more minimal use road. It fits into the, where's that wording? We felt it added more into like a marginal access street scenario. It's not a curb and gutter pavement road. It's a gravel road. It's not going to be a big, heavy thoroughfare like, a different road would be, where we would have probably tried to maintain the 66-foot wide. A few other plats we've done. or seen that have been done recently have been 50 or even narrower for right of way. So we kind of felt that this was sort of in harmony with the project. So
And you are proposing it to be a public road, not a private road?
I believe that's what
Be
Anton's intent
be
is.
dedicated to the city, right?
That's what they're
Yeah.
proposing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So with that, we will open it up to public comment. Anybody that has any comments, questions, concerns, now's the time, step forward and identify yourself and
Hi, Katie Smith. I'm a neighbor in Creechville. My question to Anton and Charlie would be, when he refers to Charlie, I'm assuming Highway Department.
no,
North
No.
Shoreland Surveying
Charlie
District.
Trovo.
No, I know Charlie, this Charlie, but when you refer to,
Sorry if I said
so,
your son.
yeah, so, with the street situation, has it been brought to the Highway Department to see if that's a possibility to get in and out of your homes there for plowing and I guess I have that concern because I'm the neighbor across the street and I know what it takes to get in and out of that little dirt road.
Yeah,
And I was just wondering, like, if you
I
had.
haven't. I haven't been up there.
Okay, that would be my question. It just seems like I respect what you're doing, but it seems like such a small piece of property to put that many homes on, in that area. But, that I don't know until, I can understand, the size of the street and everything going in and out of there. So I guess that's one of my big concerns. And it's the same thing with when that drainage ditch, that's been there for a long time, that riprap in there. So that's been in place for a long time. And so there's been concerns and that's been fixed too as well over the years. So, and I don't even know, now that we're all in Creechville, now that we're all in the city limits up there, I don't even know if the existing roads, especially the one at the end on Second Avenue there, is even being addressed. It may be at this time, with the neighbors getting in and out of their property on a city street. So I have those concerns in that rural kind of pocket there. We've probably been annexed in, I don't know, 5 years now or so. So those are my concerns right now. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Anybody else? Fritz?
Yeah, I realize this is in the early stages here, but Anton proposed to me that if I were to vacate my eastern 33 feet of my property, which joins his, that there would be a T for sewer and water, that he would install such a thing upstream of where it is written on this plot map. And during this discussion, I guess I realized that even that T would need to be placed into Lot 4 of Block 1, because otherwise it would have to go across Cook County property in order to access my property. It's just, Mr. Surveyor guy. I see.
I think it would be just slightly below that, so it'd still be within the portion of Third Avenue West that's not vacated, so which you're newly
So
acquired.
you're-
Basically, put it,
You-
we can put it right adjacent to this arrow.
You would not vacate south of there?
Right, correct.
Okay, wasn't understanding that. But that's Cook County property,
It's tax forfeited.
probably gonna go up for auction someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I assume they'll sell it, and when this sewer is put in, it'll be adjacent to municipal sewer and buildable, so.
I tried to buy it, but I didn't get noticed because I'm not an adjacent property owner because I'm across the street.
That puts me on the,
So it's you.
boy.
What's the distance?
Oh,
Well,
just another question that Katie brought up, a 50-foot wide street there. And there, so we're kind of assuming that parking would take place on property rather than the street? For
yeah, it's a
plowing?
50-foot right of way, and the road bed is 20.
Yeah, we put a 20-foot road bed in there.
So the right of way itself is, right now, is drawn as 50 feet.
50 and 20-foot road bed, and that would be paved then? No, be gravel, and that would be property owners, if they want to get it paved, they'd have to pay for it later on?
I mean, I'm assuming that if it becomes part of the public system and everybody that owned those lots petition to get it done, then they all would get hit with assessments for whatever it costs to do.
Right. I'm just trying to clarify whether or not I'd run into any problems, just if I were to go along with myself vacating my portion of this street here. And, so, any other feedback? I'm not sure. I kind of think it doesn't bother me to do this, so that,
You want to come in to talk to Tom Nelson and I sometime, and we can go through what you might do with your property and see.
sewer water scene here?
We'd sit down with you.
Yeah. When's he generally available?
Monday through Friday.
I've been out of town for the last month, so on and off, but, okay.
Can I say something maybe? Just briefly, if this was graded out in the standard way, it's 20 city lots, which with the minimum sizes, you could in theory get 5 houses per side, and so a total of 10. And so, again, to fit in, and I only say that in the sense of like obviously putting a road bed of 50 by almost 500 foot long road in there takes up a lot of space. But my intention, I guess, is more so because of what is around there, the other properties we've built on, a house on 5 or 6 city lots. And but for me, because I can't ask the city to do this and to put this infrastructure in and assess all these lots, and it's really the returns of how many to do. I'd still need a road even if I put 4 houses up there, but then to spread that cost out between 4 lots and 4 houses, now all of a sudden makes it, you almost have to build a bigger, fancier, more expensive house in order to, like, if you have a lot cost that's $90,000 for now all of a sudden. So my goal is to try and find that happy medium between like where there is the cost per lot for development matches the scale of what it is that we're trying to do up there, so that we can, that we can build the houses that we want to build. Anyway, that's all I'd say. If that makes sense.
I'm just gonna ask, what's your timeline for getting all these houses built? Marais Smith.
Our goal is to do infrastructure if we can, depending on how this fall goes. If we can do the road and if we can get the engineering and the road work done and stubs set this fall, would be fantastic. And if more, based on the fact that it's the end of August, it might be still a challenge, but if we could start and we could finish it in the spring, we probably would be, once the infrastructure is done and there's stubs to each lot, it would probably be with our
staffing, we'd probably be 2 to 3 years of building. Would be my guess. I mean, we could maybe do it faster, but 2 years at a minimum. You know, it kind of depends. If they don't sell, then I'm not gonna keep building.
Well, that's what, next question is, do you have buyers out there that are gonna buy houses now, or
No,
you're just going with what you've done so far?
Yeah, yeah.
So it might take you 10 years to do it.
It might, but we're 2 for 3 in 2.5 years. So, you know, and that's with other projects on board. If we got this done so that we can go, then that would be our focus, and we'd clear out what we have left on our schedule, and we wouldn't do anything except for getting these up there. That would be our main focus. So, if that answers that.
So the roadway, are you expecting that 2 cars will be able to pass each other on this road?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we had 20. I don't know, Charlie probably remembers better than I do. I mean, knowing that we have part of it is once we have this aspect of it going, it's gonna fall into our engineers' hands, and they're gonna look at what grades are, what the curves are, and they might say, no, you know, 50-foot right-of-way does work fine with the ditches and the culverts and the things we have to do to make sure that stormwater manage is okay, but you need to, you know, we might end up at 20, I don't really know, I'm not an engineer, I mean, you know, so we can take this information that we've been able to generate from the field and give it to them. If they say it's 22 or 25 or 30, then, you know, as long as the rest of our setback still falls in that 50, I think that's fine, you know, I mean, everything will have driveways, it's not on-street parking, I don't see issues with cars being able to pass each other. I don't see that being, I don't wanna build on that place for 3 years if I can't get by one of my guys coming back from the lumberyard, right? So that's not, you know, there's, I think, minimum standards that this city wants to see too.
The reason I asked that question is because you see this, if it's gonna become a public road, that it's gonna get a lot of traffic.
Yeah,
Because we have a ton of traffic going by our house every day.
yeah, yeah,
It's a ton,
yeah,
even though we've only got 7 houses down.
right.
They're in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out. If this is gonna be a public way, you're gonna have a lot of traffic. Just to let you know. And where is your water runoff gonna go to, and so it doesn't go out into the Gunpland?
So again, that's for the engineers. We had in some of our early sketches, we had like what we thought based on topography and elevations, where our drainages would go. I mean, right now, I don't know if you have one of my bigger drawings, but there would be, if you look at block 1, between lots 2 and 3, that east-west line, there was a pickup point there that would send over underneath the road and over to catch in to the east side of the road is one spot. There was one more location probably lined up directly across from block 2, lots 3 and 4, that diagonal line that runs down to the corner. Another one picked up there, and then one more final one that would come down and go into outlot A. You know, but again, that's why we're paying engineers to come up with that.
But that water's not gonna get out on, all the water's gonna go someplace so it doesn't get onto the Gunpland.
Yeah, and there is actually, you know, there is stormwater out on the Gunpland. So that might be what they tell us to do, is that we have a catch and we have to go down and tie into the stormwater system that's in the Gunpland. That's one of those things where they might just say that's what we gotta do, and that's what we gotta do.
Part of what the engineering does is they're gonna create what they call a SWIP plan, which is a stormwater pollution prevention plan. And that deals with all your rainwater and runoff and stuff. So they're gonna have to design that plan with specs so that it's able to treat the water from not only the road, but also from both building sites and everything. So that's a pretty big portion of the engineering, which, you know, once we have the approval of like that, plat, we'll then be doing a little more field work so that Anton then can hand all that stuff over to them, start the ticker on their clock to design that, so.
Anything else, Rory?
Not at this time.
Okay. Fritz?
Just had a question, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but now, if I were to go ahead with this vacation, because if you're gonna vacate his portion of Third, you're gonna vacate mine. And so, would I have, and I think this may be just a buyer beware issue, you know, a difficulty in allowing my roughly vacated area to become a driveway for what I have 3 buildable lots on my side of the property there. And that being the topography as it is, it would need to be accessed from Ninth and going down, because you got a solid rock knob right there where that my property of mine ends. It's quite possible it might be able to access the lower lot, buildable lot, through the Cook County property.
Wouldn't driveway placement just be governed by the same rules they are, whether it was vacated or not?
Well, the only thing that troubles me about what your question is that if you're thinking there's 3 buildable lots across the east side of that property, if there's no public street access to that middle lot, it just becomes more complicated. It doesn't mean you wouldn't find a way to do it. We've certainly done driveway easements across properties and things like that. And there's room for you to do that and still have 10,000 square feet left. But you can see with Anton's, he's only got 2 across that same area, so.
I mean, I think that would be worthwhile, you coming in and talking to Mike and kind of going over the options and what that might mean in terms of, you know, your property. Because we're not really here prepared to talk about your site and what, you know, the future of that might be, but I think that would be a.
Hold on, I'll put an argument here, Mr. Chairperson. I wasn't prepared for this at all, as I received absolutely no notice that this was gonna happen until this morning. And so, you know, it would have really been nice to have some time to mull over this issue. But,
So,
and
just
so
to
I'm-
go back to that issue, was there not a requirement to notify adjacent property owners on a
No,
on a
matter of fact, there's
subdivision?
not our ordinance does not call for a public hearing on preliminary or final plats. We just do them anyway. But it's really more of a
Interesting.
procedural, like you have to have a meeting to make a finding about stuff. We put it in the newspaper because we do that for all the things that are on your agenda, but there's not a notification requirement. No.
Take note of that.
Really, at the county level, I think all adjacent landowners are mailed something, if I recall.
If I may, I served on this board, this very same board at one time. In fact, I held the position that Mr. Kennedy holds. And all through that time, we did send out, that's why I raised the question. Because that was a customary thing that we did on these situations, to let the people that are adjoining property to know what the intention of the person coming to the board was and what the intentions of the board were.
Yeah, and I was here too, in this chair when you were there in that chair. And I don't know if we did any preliminary plats. They're pretty rare, and for other items that come on the agenda, of course, there is a requirement, and we do mail notice to
Whenever it's
people.
conditional use permit, we do it.
Yeah, variances and conditional use permits are standards, and then there's, you know, we might have 70 people that we directly mail a notice to, as well as putting it in the newspaper. But in this case, there's not that requirement.
If I may.
You may.
Seems like you're gonna.
Well, my concern on that methodology, so to speak, would be that to avoid Anton having to go through a lot of costs for the next stage of this plan, is that the city does notify people of the preliminary plot situation to hear out some of the options that are available, so. I mean, realistically, I mean, we talked a year ago that it took this long for the engineering to come through, and that's cool. You know, I know these things take forever, but, I don't know. I was enjoying my time in Duluth, so.
I was just gonna, just suggest if you want to discuss that process and procedure, I'm sure we're fine with talking about it. I think with Anton's request on the table, my understanding is all rules have been followed.
It's also
But-
worth noting that the proposed street vacation isn't something that you do with the preliminary plat. It's its own separate process that we would be, if he wasn't a party to it, which he'll have to be if we're gonna look at it, if we're gonna take it up, then we would send notification to him, as his properties are affected pretty greatly by that.
Yeah.
On a vacation, the property, again, Marais Smith, of the city street, how does the city feel on that being a vacation?
I don't know how the city council or the planning commission feels. When Anton's talked to me about it, my concern is that we have a strategy to serve any potential future development on that block to the west with municipal sewer. So as long as that's there, we certainly don't need the street right-of-way that they're proposing, plus this street right-of-way, plus, I mean, that's just too many street right-of-ways in there to get all that property. But the east side of that block that's west of them, it'd be nice if we weren't cutting off sewer access to those interior lots. And there's no reason we have to, and it sounds like they're talking about ways to make that happen, so.
Anything else? Anybody else? Care to weigh in? All right, let's close the public hearing and open it up to planning commission discussion. Commissioners, comments, thoughts?
Do we have findings in this?
Not really
The way that we
findings,
went-
I think, if you look at what Mike provided was
Yeah.
that information with regarding what we require for a preliminary plat and whether or not he's provided the information as required, and if not,
Yeah.
what the differences might have been.
Yeah, and I guess you pointed out a couple of those
So, yeah.
as well.
I think that we should revisit that 50-foot right-of-way question. That's a big one. 66 feet is what we normally have. Our ordinance does call for marginal access streets to have 50 feet. We don't know what the heck a marginal access street is, of course, because our ordinance doesn't actually define any of the categories that it uses. But it does thankfully refer to marginal access streets right beforehand, saying that we should consider platting a marginal access street adjacent to a trunk highway. So it's basically a frontage road on a highway.
Just for reference, a few years back, the city reduced the width of some streets in north-south running avenues.
Yeah.
Right up there next to,
First, second,
yeah.
third.
And what size were they reduced to?
28 feet is the pavement width. The right-of-way is 66 feet.
Okay, so we're talking about the difference between right-of-way and.
Yeah. So you look at it, and it's, and the same thing here, in a 50-foot road, they're talking about a 20-foot. And I suspect it'll end up having to be wider than 20 feet traveled surface. There's not a whole lot of room. They're drawing it in here so that there's room in these right-of-ways to install municipal utilities, but not without digging up the neighbor's yard. There isn't. So that's what we use 66 feet to do, is make sure that there is room for traffic, room for parking, room for pedestrians, room for utilities, all those things as appropriate for an area. So it could be that 50 feet will work here, but that's something that we'll have to see when the road design comes back. It's something that gets my attention anyway.
So that's something that occurs between now and final plat approval?
Yeah, it does. Although you can set whatever rules you want about this before you do approval on it. We don't see the stormwater planning or the municipal utilities or any of that stuff that really takes thousands of dollars to do until after the preliminary plat is approved. We may end up having to make some changes to things based on, I think it's likely that there'll have to be some tweaks to this based on the results of that. And some of those tweaks might be that, you know, this lot used to be 10,080 square feet and it's going to have to be 9,600. So that, you know, gauge your comfort level with how important that number is on any of these lots that are close to the right of way.
Yeah, it seemed like even here when we're talking about this one block, let's say lot 2, block 2, that one is, I mean, it still gets the 10,000 even though it's not quite the right dimensions.
If you look at, you know, developed portions of the city, they certainly are generally more dense than this.
Yeah.
Now, most of the Creechville is significantly less dense than this, but on Creechville Road itself, there's quite a few lots that aren't 10,000 square feet. And on Fifth Avenue, the same thing. There's 3 or 4 houses that are connected to municipal sewer that are less than 10,000 square feet there. So, and they don't have the depth either.
Right.
So it's not a unprecedented idea that we would deviate from those dimensional requirements.
Well, we just recommended a rezoning on a lot that was less than the
Yeah.
required
Right.
minimum lot size, so. With
Well-
the understanding that that would
Yeah.
likely be developed for residential purposes.
The right-of-way that you just approved for the Nordic Star Plat is 50 feet, I believe. They also had utility easement or drainage easement or both adjacent to that right-of-way. So the easement crosses those properties, and that's one strategy that we may use here if we need a little more room for something, is just to add some easements on the properties. But that's a private street, not a public street, and so we're less concerned about, well, just about everything.
Well, and I think, you know, recognizing that there likely is going to be more traffic on this street than just those property owners within the subdivision, because it will now create a loop
Yeah.
out of Creechville from a different, you know, access. And if it's a public street, those people live on that, up off of Ninth Street, certainly would have the option of, you know, using that as a means of access, ingress, egress, whatever.
Yeah.
Any other comments? You know, we talk about this issue of affordable housing, and the fact is that, you know, here's Anton stepping forward with a development plan to create some new lots that hopefully would provide additional housing stock in the community, whether it's built to be affordable housing. I don't think that's our call at this point, but the fact is that it would be additional homes built in the city that would be available. We haven't seen this kind of a development in town, and I mean, other than the Nordic Star development, which is not the same type of thing. That's not a market rate development. You know, I think we need to try to figure out ways to help promote and encourage single-family home development in the city, and there's so few areas that have access to city sewer and water and the ability to be developed. You know, I would hope that we can work with this proposal and figure out a way to make this, you know, make this work for the city, because I think it'd be a great benefit.
So, because I'm still new and trying to figure out things, the size of the road is what concerns me. So, am I hearing you right when you say, if we approve this and it's 50 feet, but the engineers say, no, you're gonna need more to get the city sewer and water in there? You're gonna make the decision then, yes or no, or how does that work?
So this is the preliminary plat. It's short on details. It's a concept plan, really, is what it
Okay.
is. And we ask for a few, like, what's the road grade going to end up being, and what is the approximate location of the sewer, just as a feasibility test. But they need to spend, you know, they need to invest a lot of money in design to put a real plan together. And then when they do that, they come back with their plans and get a final plat. So they can't actually sell any of these lots until a final plat is done. if the design comes back and we think things need to change, then it'll be that final plat review where you'll have a chance to decide that.
When there's lots of kind of in-between steps too with regard to like stormwater permits that would be issued not by us, but by somebody else, wetland issues that would have to be addressed and resolved. The utilities, we're not gonna make that decision about how those utilities are gonna fit in there. I mean, it's obviously gonna be
Okay,
with the
so-
consultation of our city engineer and making sure that that fits into our system of public utilities. So there's kind of in-between steps too, but, as Mike said, to start this process, you have to put something on paper and bring it forward to see if this merits our consideration to say, yeah, go ahead and start working on this, because in good faith, he's gonna be investing now a bunch of money into trying to make this work based on our recommendations to him. So if we don't like this and we think that this is just the wrong direction to go, then, we should be saying that up front too, so he's not, on the hook for.
No, I like it. I think it's a good plan.
It's worth noting that we don't have road design standards. It's done on a case-by-case basis. So we rely on a competent, qualified civil engineer to do the design, but we don't give them any guidance to say it has to be this wide. The only time we talk about road width is when we might consult with the fire chief about emergency vehicle access.
That happens sometime in this process?
It will.
It will, yeah, in this
Yeah.
process.
But there has to be a
It
road
already
design before we can do that, not just a concept of.
Right.
We did in one of our early, because we're trying to figure out how to do this, because obviously the more of the property you turn into a road, the less, and then you're up against all these site requirements of size and square footage and lot lengths and setbacks and all that. One of our original plans was almost like a lollipop right up with a turnaround. But you think what a turnaround size is for a fire truck? I mean, it was like, well, there goes that one, because then it's a private road, we don't have to we can work basically within the existing grid work, and we just widen this alley, and you've blown out the top 6 lots of 20, just to turn a fire truck on. And then they didn't like, deadhead water line, so there was issues about how do you do that, and who's gonna maintain that, if you have a water line that runs up and just stops, and so, anyway, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a road that would be similar to this is the road that was put into Humphrey Circle a number of years back, and I don't remember what the width of that road was, but
I'm looking on this drawing we've got on 9th Street, doesn't look like it's a whole lot wider. I think a lot of those roads up there, that's a pretty good example of what a really narrow gravel road looks and behaves like.
I don't think you have 50 feet between the trees in some places.
I don't want to rush things or anything, but I'd like to, as a courtesy, being this is your last meeting, ask you if you want to go out with a bang. And, would you, if we're at the point of making a motion,
Oh, yeah.
would you like to keep it going?
I will make a motion that we accept this preliminary plat.
all right,
Go forward.
there has been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion? Any direction that we want to offer with regard to the approval? Or Mike, do you think that we're okay just granting the preliminary approval and making sure that the communications between you and Anton continue with regard to the issues regarding the utilities and roads and the vacation and all the other items that need to be still dealt with?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. So, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion to approve the preliminary plat, vote aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion passes. There's no old business, no new business. I'd like to thank Michael for the time he's served on the planning commission, been a good representative to the city. Again, anybody that's watching the video wants to serve, it's an opportunity,
Opportunity of a lifetime.
maybe.
Maybe.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Appreciate it, Michael.
Appreciate
Thank
that.
you. Yes, thank you. We are adjourned.
Sabanya, seems like you need some work.
Something to keep him occupied. He's been on the planning commission for